Is your body the real reason you haven't found love yet? Welcome to the Live at Lunch. I'm your coach, Helen Bennett. I help people pleasers, perfectionists, and procrastinators ditch diets, free themselves from emotional eating, and body shame. And in fact, that's a big topic that we're on today. And in fact, this topic was came into my world through an email from somebody who's taking part in the Feel the Fear challenge. So if you are interested in taking part in the challenge, just check the description below the video and you'll be able to find a link. It's completely free. It goes over 5 days. And we essentially take the emotion of fear and we learn how to process it in a really adult way so we don't end up binge eating with the food. But on the 5th day, the topic that we spoke about is the fear of loss and the fear of love. And one of the participants in the challenge reached out to me with a long email. I won't share her name and I won't share the entire email, but I will just pull a few pieces out of it because I think it's going to partly shock and horrify you a little bit. Some of the things she wrote just really shocked me. But also, I think there's going to be parts of it that really resonate for you if you're somebody who feels like they want to be in a relationship, but they haven't found the one yet. And they worry that their body is one of the main reasons. If you know me and you've worked with me before, or you're getting to know me now, you will know that I never paint rainbows and unicorns on things. If something is true, it's true. So we're going to get really real. We are going to do a proper reality check today. And I will give you my take on all of this as best as I can. And better than that, I'm going to give you some real, hopefully some practical tips and advice on what to do if you're feeling like you're somebody who wants to be in a relationship, but potentially your body is holding you back. If you enjoyed today's video, please subscribe to the channel if you'd like a weekly 15-minute feast of freedom. I'll be here every week going live. And if you get value from today's video or you found there was something in it that just made you think in a positive way, I'd love you to smash the like button, but let me earn that like before you do that. So let's dive in. This is the email that I received. Hi, Helen. I just wanted to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude for the amazing challenge. I also relate so much to the idea of being a strong, independent woman. But do I long for a romantic relationship? Absolutely. Have I found one yet? No. If I'm being completely truthful and vulnerable, I believe I'm a little bit unlovable because of my body. At work in healthcare, I hear mostly male surgeons making negative body comments about patients and BMIs, though they should zip it because they actually get paid more for BMI patients, and they grossly jokingly call it their BMW factor. Anyway, she says, my favorite comment was from a doctor that I actually enjoy working with and respect, saying he didn't believe in gastric bypass surgery. The patients should just put duct tape over their mouths to stop them from eating. Also, one of my friends recently has been pushing me to go on Ozempic. She made the comment, I don't want to offend you. I'm not saying you're not pretty now, but you would be so much prettier if you could just lose the weight. She goes on to say she knows her friend was coming from, a loving place, and her friend is actually on Ozempic herself. And in fact, Ozempic is a big topic, and maybe that's something we can go into next week. By the way, I've worked with clients who have used Ozempic and binged anyway. I've worked with clients who are on Ozempic, and I've worked with people who won't touch Ozempic. But really, at the heart of this, we're dealing with the root cause of this overeating. But anyway, she goes on to talk about dating and how it's a bit of a nightmare, especially online dating. I think any of you who've done online dating will probably relate to a lot of that. And she just ends the email by saying, sometimes I wonder why I haven't found the one yet. I guess I'm sending you this message because maybe you could address that last question in your YouTube video. Yes, lovely one, I absolutely can. The tricky thing about this is we don't get to control when the right one or when somebody who loves us back is going to step into our lives, somebody who we think is wonderful and attractive and sexy and awesome, and who thinks the same about us. So this video is not about settling. So we can't control the outcome. There's a lot of things we can control for, and I'm going to help you with that today. But the when of it, or the how, is just not in our control. So we want to be honest about that as much as I can give advice and guidance and insight, ultimately, there's a little bit of letting go and having a bit of faith, which hopefully this video will give you so that you can let go and do the work and be so glad that you've done it all. Because as you might have guessed from the way I'm speaking, I don't believe that just being in a body is the thing that would prevent you from a certain body shape or size, is the thing that would prevent you from ever finding the one. However, I did say I'd be real and honest with you. And I think a good coach knows how to say the uncomfortable. And the uncomfortable thing is there is such a thing in sort of the world that I live in. And, by the sounds of things this client lives in, there's such a thing as pretty privilege and thin privilege. And that privilege, I'd say, I think objectively and subjectively, means that the chances of getting a lot more goes at this and the chances of getting more initial interest are high. Now, the way I want to separate this out is to think about pretty privilege and thin privilege in the context of getting a job offer. There's no doubt, and I think the stats to support it, that pretty privilege is a thing. And I think probably a lot of people that I've worked with, I've certainly been there, have been on the side of the not being in the pretty or the thin camp that has actually affected us from getting that job offer. However, I've also been in a situation where I'm absolutely drop dead gorgeous, by all definitions of the modern kind of aesthetic, person got the job ahead of me, only to not be that good at it, or she found it too stressful. And a few months later, it was given to me anyway. So ultimately, I really believe that while it absolutely does mean that we might not get those first opportunities as often as somebody who might be thinner, prettier, younger, etc., by modern standards as us, doesn't play as big a factor in the long run. And so we're going to keep that in mind. And the other thing I want you to think about is, I bet there's somebody, probably not just one, there's probably quite a few, who you have been wildly attracted to, who've just fallen head over heels for, who didn't by any standards meet the modern definition of sort of perfection. And maybe it's true that when you first met them, you didn't think too much about them, but then, you got to know them a little bit. And the next thing you know, like, they were just the bee's knees and you're head over heels and you could think of nothing but that person. But they didn't, in retrospect, fit that ideal. So there's always somebody out there. And then the last thing I want you to think about is how many, people have maybe not declared their love for you, but have found you attractive, have pursued you in your lifetime, for whom you just didn't feel the same way back. And it was no offense to them. It just wasn't for you. So with that in mind, when we ask a question like, why haven't I found the one yet? Sadly, our brain never, ever, ever comes up with good answers to that question. Whenever we ask a why question, usually the answers don't serve us. So when we ask something like, why haven't I found the one yet? Or why does nobody like me? Or why am I not in a relationship? If you're sitting there out there now watching this in that situation, what comes to your mind? And if nothing comes to your mind, your brain will very quickly start to hypothesize. Could it be this? Could it be that? Maybe I'm too thin. Maybe I'm too fat. Maybe I'm too short. Maybe I'm too tall. Maybe I'm too blonde. Maybe I'm too dark. Maybe I'm too freckled. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm too masculine. That was my favorite one as well. And the problem is that it starts finding ways to solve that equation. And they're never good because it tends to look for the negative as opposed to the opposite. So the way I like to do it is when I can hear somebody's asking themselves a why question that's repeatedly not serving them, we just reframe it into a how question. And the how question might be, how do I find the one? How do I find a deep relationship in the context of a world with pretty privilege, with thin privilege, with all the things that are potentially hurdles to the objective? And when we ask the question, how, now our brain brilliantly, because this is what it will always do, starts to come up with ideas, hypotheses, practical things that you might be able to do to find the one. So while we acknowledge that maybe a particular body shape or a particular height, skin tone, boob size, whatever, has an impact on the number of initial kind of, or the number of availability of options, it doesn't mean that there's no option at all. And if we can take that thesis and say, well, it might be a little bit harder for me to find somebody as opposed to somebody who is half my size and, whatever, in the perfect body, it doesn't mean there's no options out there for me. So how do I make this happen? one of the things I'm going to harp on about until I'm going to die on this hill, and we say this in day 5 of the challenge, is when you build that inner worth and confidence, not only are you more likely to take care of yourself, which means you're more likely to look healthier, look more vibrant. Maybe, yes, you'll lose the weight. Maybe you'll, I don't know, do your nails or whatever you think needs to be done in order to attract a partner. By the way, I'm not against making aesthetic changes. I dye my hair. I wax my legs. But, I just really think when it comes from the inside, you do what brings you joy and not so that I can get the approval of others. Like, for example, you'll notice I never, have my nails done, and probably a bunch of other things which we won't go into. So I don't believe there's anything wrong in pursuing an aesthetic ideal. But when you start to pursue it from the inside, from a place of deep respect and enjoyment of being in the body that you're in, which takes a long time to build if you've been in the opposite, in hating yourself and loathing your body. But as you start to do that, you start to build a real sense of worth and radiance. And if you think about it, if you got 2 people walk into the room, let's say the 2 men who walk into the room, the one is aesthetically not as meeting all the criteria that the modern world would say is good looking. But he's just walks in, he's got a quiet confidence, he knows himself, he knows what he wants, he knows where he's going. He's unashamedly, but not braggadocious. He's just got that beautiful sense of, I know who I am. Versus somebody who comes in who just meets the ideal of what's good looking, but is chronically insecure, chronically feeling inadequate, doesn't want to be touched because his tummy is too wobbly today, or we didn't do enough of a workout, or his bank balance isn't good enough, and always looking for the reasons to hate himself. Which would you be more attracted to? So when they walk in, sure, you might find the one person more attractive, but ultimately that magnetism, that radiance, that confidence that comes out of somebody who knows themselves is wildly attractive. And particularly when it's paired with, you start to get to know them, and oh my God, and then all the things you didn't even notice about them before suddenly become more attractive than you could possibly have imagined. And this is the truth of it. And we've all been there. We've been, in that equation where we've witnessed somebody come in who would never usually have chosen as somebody that we'd be attracted to. And hey ho, what do you know? You suddenly falling madly in love. So I really think if we can work on that inner self-worth, that radiance, that magnetism. Remember, this isn't my one. I had a client in a group coaching once who came up with this. She said, magnets powerfully attract some things and powerfully repel others. So let's be magnetic. And I completely agree. Let's build, let's take the time to build your inner worth, your sense of joy. What brings you delight? Where do you feel passion in your life? Own it. Because when somebody, and they're probably already out there, they're probably already right in front of you, comes into your world and reflects back to you that you are loved, you will actually believe it. Because here's the other thing that we see all the time, and I know that this is true, and I've absolutely been the person who was guilty of all of this, but when you hate yourself, when you're self-critical, when you spend all day in a bad neighborhood up here, and somebody comes along and shows you the opposite, shows you that you're lovable, that you're quirky, that you're cool, that you're sexy, that you're whatever, it's almost impossible to believe them because you conditioned yourself with something so totally different. It can be right in front of you and you wouldn't let it in. And that's why, regardless of, even though we can't control when you might find the one, when you're going to connect with somebody really deeply or intimately, and we certainly can't control whether they like you back because not everybody is for everybody. What we can control for, where we can take our power back, is in building that beautiful muscle of self-confidence and self-worth. And yes, that takes practice and it takes skills, and maybe it's going to take some help from a coach or whatever the case may be. But it's such a journey worth being on, because the way I think about it is this. In a worst case scenario, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold today. In a worst case scenario, you've done all this work, you're feeling better about yourself, you kind of enjoy your own company, you're looking after yourself better because you appreciate the body you're in, you're getting out there, you're putting yourself out there and connecting with all sorts of people. And sure, online dating may not be for you, but just chat to the mailman, chat to the guy in the bakery, whatever, do, do whatever you have to do. Open your circle because, like we said, yes lives in the land of no. And just start connecting from that place of inner self-worth that you're building. And let's say you do all of that, and in a year's time, you're hit by a bus, you're lying on your deathbed, and you think, man, I never found the one. That would be a crying shame. But you would be so proud of the work you've done. And also, your life would be so much better based on all this work anyway. And while it would be a shame, and it might not feel that great in terms of, man, I wish that was something I'd always wanted to do. I don't think for a second you would go with regret, because you'd know that once you knew better, you started doing better, and your life became immeasurably improved by doing this work. So while I, as a coach, I wish I could guarantee the one. There's some things that are sort of very, very predictable, but we can't, right? But I can tell you this, I've been doing this work for 5 years, and I've had plenty of men and women come into my coaching practice who, and oftentimes in absolutely drop dead gorgeous bodies, by the way, still thinking they were, too fat, too ugly, who came in thinking they would never find love. It was their biggest fear. And I think that is our biggest fear as a human being because of, what did we say? Day number 2, we spoke about the fear of abandonment. But they came in convinced they would never find love. And I was fortunate enough in so many cases to witness during the time period that I was working with them finding absolutely incredible partners who just loved and adored them, and vice versa. And some of them went on to marry those partners too. So I don't believe for a second that you're the one exception to the rule. And I really do believe that a lot of that, the reason they've found those people was because they were there all along, but they had done the work to condition themselves to be ready. So then when it was standing right in front of them, they didn't push it away out of a place of inadequacy. I think I'm going to leave it there. So if you enjoyed that video, please smash the like button so we can get this content out to more people. I will be back next Thursday for a little Freedom 15, a feast of freedom for about 15 minutes every Thursday. But until then, yeah, I just want to give you a little bit of respect because this journey of connecting is not easy, and there can be a lot of bumps along the way, a lot of rejection or failure, or people not attracted to you back the same way you're attracted to them. And the hardest thing in the world, and the bravest thing, the most courageous thing in the world, is continuing to come back to yourself and do the work to condition this muscle to be constantly looking for positive evidence that will empower you to go forward and take those brave chances, instead of conditioning yourself by asking a why question into the opposite. So ask yourself, not why haven't I found the one yet, but how? Given what I have, with the tools that I have, how? And tap into your radiance, tap into your magnetism, and begin to treat yourself with the love that you're hoping to receive, so that when it shows up for you, you won't doubt it. You'll just go, yeah, it's here. And I believe it, and I'm ready. And the other thing I want to say last up is, you don't have to be ready. You don't have to have done all this work in order to find the one. Oftentimes, deep healing happens in relationships, and that was my story. Well, I did do a lot of healing outside of my relationships. Some of the deepest healing happened in a relationship. So don't wait to be ready. Don't wait to be perfect. Don't just get out there, start doing the work, and what is right for you will absolutely come your way. I have no doubt about it, and I really hope you find the one sooner rather than later. But if you don't, it's a journey worth progressing on anyway. And when the time is right, because you have struggled, you will savor the moment, because you know what it is not to have it. You will not take it for granted. And that can make relationships even better. Okie dokie. I'm going to end it there, although I can feel another 10 things popping into my mind. And I'll see you next Thursday. Feel free to send me any questions. I can answer them on a Thursday. And if you haven't joined the challenge yet and you'd like to, links in the description below. See you next week, lovelies. Have a good one. Bye.